I'm getting really sick of this hash routing going on. So let's actually go make that work. Go back to Client app, change hash router in all three places here to, come on, change that to browser router. So import browser router, and then the opening and closing tag, change that to browser router. Okay. Now go to your Webpack config. And inside of the dev server, just add one more thing. It says history API fallback is true. This is basically telling your dev server that if you don't recognize something, just send it down to the client. Or in other words, the client will worry about the routing, I will not. So I just added line 13 here.
And that allows browser router to work.
Yep. If you don't put that, then you're going to get a 404 as soon as you go to search, right? Because it doesn't know to send it down to index.html. Now you got to restart your server because you modified the. And there you go. 404s will fall back to index.html. A question I'm often asked here is like, well, if 404s fall back to the index.html, what happens when I actually have a 404? And the answer to that question is your browser router will have to take care of it as well. So in fact, I think we can just do that super quick. This isn't in my notes, so programming on the fly. So you can const 404 equals h1 404, and then you can just do down here the last thing, route, and you just say component without a path. It basically says if nothing else matches, then render this. So now we should be able to, I'll go back in just a second, but when I'm coding on the fly, it's probably best to, then you need to do switch. All right, well, we're getting crazy now. So we're going to put a component in there called switch, and I think this should work now. Good. Okay, so let's talk about what we did here. Okay, so a couple things happened. First thing we did is we switched to browser router, right? So if you look here, our URLs are now much better. They look like we would expect. When you go to /search, it takes you to this page as opposed to having that stupid hash in there. This is also way more SEO friendly, like 10 billion times more SEO friendly. I believe that's an actual number. The second thing we did here is we told Webpack that whenever it does not recognize the URL, right? Because it doesn't have a /search file to serve. It doesn't know about anything like that. It's just that if you don't recognize something, just send it index.html. That's what this history API fallback is. This is not probably not what you're going to do in production. Definitely not what you're going to do in production. Actually, you're not going to run dev server in production, so you're not going to do that in production. So this is the dev trick. Okay, and then you're going to go back to client app. I wanted to show you what a 404 looks like. So we made this 404 component, right? and we told it to render basically any time that nothing else is matched. However, if we did not put this switch component in, what the switch component does, it says render exactly one component and never render two. So then it's going to go in order, and notice on landing it matches this one first, right? So then it doesn't even look at the other ones. If I don't have that switch component in there, it's going to render both of them, right? Because they both technically match. This one right here, 404, matches everything, right? So you need the switch component to say, only render this when nothing else matches, and make sure it's the last one. Any questions about router? There's some more advanced and weird cases you can use with router, but to be honest with you, this is most of it. I'm going to show you the other kind of two hard things to do with router, which is making server-side router work. Because if you don't do it correctly, you end up writing your routes twice, right? Once on the server and once on the client. And as everyone knows that writes any amount of code, if you try to keep two files in sync, they inevitably fall out of sync, right? So it's really nice if we can make the server side or the router here work both on the client and on the server, which you can. It is possible. We'll do that later, and then we'll also do code splitting, so you can split on routes as well, so you can asynchronously load those chunks. Yeah.
How do you comment out a section of HTML in JSX?
Yeah, so he's astutely pointing out that that does not work. So if you remember, anything between the curly braces is a JavaScript expression, right? So if I wanted to comment out this route right here, I'd do right? That's how you do block comments in JavaScript, is /* and then */ to end it. And then we just put that inside of curly braces, and anything between those two things will be commented out. Does that make sense? The other thing you can do, which is pretty easy, is you can just move it out and then just comment it.
One note on that, because I used my command/editor comment, and it did that. It did exactly what you said, but then the linter underlined it. Now that you said that that is correct, I looked at what the linter was telling me. A space is required after the asterisk.
Yep, like that.
Yes.
Yep. That Airbnb config is super strict, but it will save you bugs, I promise. Other questions? How do we feel so far? Is like brain melting a little bit? Is it just like a little mushy? It's a lot of content in a short amount of time.
I do have one question.
Yeah,
Would you be able to do like dynamic routing?
In what sense?
So like, let's say that we were gonna do like translations or something like that, and then have it like in the URL have like English or Spanish, like .e or /en or /es or something like that.
You do it like that.
You can do it like that.
So if you prefix it with a colon, it's saying this is a variable. And we'll actually be doing this later when we add our next route, which is details. And now, so basically anything can match on this, right? You can give it regular expressions, I think, to only match on certain things. Like there's some fanciness to go on there.
Okay.
It will then pass it as a parameter to search, right? And then inside of search, you can switch on and do whatever you want.
People are just asking your Git plugin for Sublime that's adding the little green and red dots.
Oh, right here on the side?
Yep.
It's called Git Gutter.
Git Gutter.
It's one of my favorites. So if you look, it's probably super hard for you guys to see. If you see that little plus red right there, my theme is all sorts of messed up right now. It's a lot bigger typically on my computer, but that's a line that I have modified, I think. No, I've deleted lines between that since I last committed. or if I add like, so you can see the white means I've added new lines. And then if I do like, you'll see like, well, that's red because that's not real. If you look down here where it says the yellow square, I've modified it. So that actually might be useful for you to kind of follow along, because you can see things I've changed since I last committed.
And then they're also saying in the terminal as well, you've got something for get, like omyzsh get plugin or something like that.
Oh, my bash prompt, this thing? They might be talking about that. Brew list. Bash get prompt, that's what it is. So I'm using bash, this isn't ZSH. I was using fish before this, but if I used fish, no one would understand what the hell I was doing. So we're sticking to bash today. Yeah.
Is there any known disadvantages to using the hash router?
It's like really SEO and friendly in particular. So that's part of it. It's easier to set up server side, but once you set it up on the server side to work with the client, typically it's not a lot more work to keep it going. So it's just a little bit more upfront work. And it just makes for better looking URLs, which, it's just a better thing. Yeah, it makes deep linking better. It's a better thing. You should do it. Because I said so. Just kidding. I don't know.
I was gonna ask that exact same question.
Yeah. Better looking URLs, right? I mean, one of the tests that I ran at a former company was we found that if you have better URLs, people can remember them. And so they'll share them, they'll tweet them, all those sorts of things. And if people see like hashes in there, they don't know what they mean.